Now, so let's go back to where we were, just reviewing for a minute. Uh, we talked about how in technology, objects, that is, Gegenstände, become uh, resources. That is, the sun, that is, standing reserve in our. Whenever I say resources, the translation is standing reserve. Now, and I feel only as partly as a review and partly as sort of repenting something I feel I didn't do very well. I think I didn't explain very well the sense in which the modern jetliner is not an object. I said, well, it's part of the transportation system. That's certainly true, and that's what Heidegger says. But what we would expect, remember, is that if it's not an object is a stable something or other that is made intelligible by subjects and serves to satisfy their desires, something like that. It's the things are objectified and or uh, dominated, exploited, and so forth is the picture. But when it's a resource, it's brought out in a different way. It's what a resource is revealed in its flexibility and its ability to ordered and reordered, and in whatever the situation demands. Well, I can say more about the airplane than Heidegger could. I don't know what he had in mind. Being a philosopher, he can say deep things without knowing what he's talking about. But now we can know that that an airplane on the runway could be used for packages by FedEx or by tourists as a charter plane or as a private jet by the people like the Gettys who have their own 727, or and they would be that would be being like they are like subjects, but that would only be one of its uses. It could be an object for subjects. It could be all tourists, FedEx, and so forth. That's one of the ways it's very flexible. And another way that just is very recent that Heidegger couldn't have known, but you can turn it into whatever you want because of the way the computers, let people change the prices on the seats, and there'll be only a certain number of seats for the kind of people who want to fly and spend 2 weeks and have non-refundable tickets and more seats for subjects like businessmen maybe who still have desires and identities and goals and so forth. So all of this can be regulated according to demand and change. Uh, and that's what makes it no longer like an object. I'm trying to think, it's just asking myself now, it should be different than a railroad. And somehow railroads can be used. It's a different kind of train if you're transporting coal and stuff, and if you're transporting passengers. And when you're transporting passengers, then you've got sort of there's only one price ticket, and or two, Pullman and Post or something. You can see that it's much more rigid, and on again sort of restricted to going where the tracks go. The planes can be rerouted on another uh, way that they're much more. So you get a picture like that. How did it turn to spell out? Maybe that I don't know what he had. Maybe it was the fact that the plane could do the same thing. Uh, I don't know. Anyway, that's all just a review. Me trying to get clear about phenomenon. Now let's go on. Uh, so the practices are set up to make everything challenge forth into resources. And the name of that, the way the practices work, turn everything into resources. We just have to have this as a next thing to fill in before we get to the really interesting new stuff. Is on the top of 20. That's the story about Gestell. According to ordinary usage, the German word Gestell, frame, means frame, it means bookcase, that ordinary word. It means some kind of apparatus, for example, a book rack. Gestell is also the name for a skeleton. And the employment of the word Gestell that is now required of us seems equally eerie. And he's doing this weird thing of introducing this ordinary German word and turning it into an extremely strange technical term. And That is, he's going to make Gestell, which gets translated in framing, mean the way the practices work when they set upon things, the way the practices work to turn everything into resources. And they do that, the way they work, he calls challenging forth. This is the second full paragraph on 20. And framing means the gathering together of that setting upon, that sets upon man, that is challenges him forth to reveal the real in the mode of ordering, as finding reserve. And framing means that way of revealing that holds sway in the essence of modern technology, though of course it's nothing technological. So you could translate this word Gestell. I mean, and framing is sort of a pretty good literal translation, but it might be better. I would translate it, I think, and ordering, because the basic thing about it is that it's the practices way of dealing with things is to order it all in this flexible way. Heidegger needs some word for this, and he wants it to go with all the other Schelling words that he uses on 21. I mean, it's impossible to understand it by any intuition about the German. He's just making it mean this new thing. He's taking this word bookcase and turning it into a deep philosophical word. I was at the lecture when he gave the Frage, not the technique, unit. I forget which of the many times he gave it. I think it was 55 to about 1,000 people. Can you imagine just listening to this and believing you could understand a word of it? I mean, the people all listened very respectfully, and he sort of went on in this quiet incantation-like way. If you know German and want to hear him, I've got 2 LPs of him doing other things. I don't have. There exist 3 different things that he's done, which are on LPs, the 2 Hürtlen lectures and a lecture called Identity and Difference. And he does it in a kind of low-key, hypnotic way. But what's funny was all the people coming out of the lecture were saying, "Was heißt Gestell?" I mean, what does Gestell mean? That was obviously the newest, importantest idea that Heidegger had given them, but they couldn't naturally make any sense of it. But it means that what's important about it. It's the practices. It's the way the practices work. They work by and frame, by an order, and that is what leads people. And what sort of skill is that? And what actual practices are those? Well, Heidegger isn't very concrete, but he says they're practices of challenging force. That's as far as he gets. And Foucault builds all this out with great detail. For instance, giving people exams is a form of Gestell. It puts them, it orders them. I mean, once you give people standard exams like IQ tests, then you can make normal curves, and you can say where they are on the curve, or you can give people exams in courses. That means you can break down the course into components and check whether they've learned each component, and you can also check how much they should know at each point, so you can give them exams at various times, and then you can, and all of this is a way of, it's a kind of practice for producing this kind of order in which we now have all these records of how people should, how well they should perform at each stage and with each component of each discipline. And Foucault says it seems so obvious to us that that's how you check on people, because we are in this, he doesn't use Heidegger jargon, but I'm mixing the two. We're in this in framing, challenging forth mode. But in the old days, you didn't do it that way. You had to contrast an apprentice. When you wanted to understand whether somebody had learned to make a violin, you didn't divide it into component tasks and what they should know at each stage and give them exams to see how they compared with on the normal curve. You just, they hung around for a certain time, and when they were ready to make their own violin, they made it, and then the masters played it and listened to it, and then they either said, yes, you're now a violin maker, or you're not. That's a much a more nurturing, much less challenging forth way of understanding what it is to acquire a skill. So, what we're interested in this one, and so this, what happens is, for Heidegger, it turns out, and this is what I was learning this morning, and it's still new to me, I'm getting used to it, just two basic ways that people can relate to things and let them show up. They either let them show up by bringing them forth, or they let them show up by challenging forth. The name, now we got all this up here somewhere.
If that looks okay, we should put it on top.
What do you mean?
Well, if you, once you check it over, you should put it.
I see. Okay. Let me. So I'm sure it's okay. I'm going to put it up and take it. Well, let's see. Because already I'm wondering. Relation to the clearing. So policing. Relation to things. Historic. Okay. Whatever it is. We don't have the big distinction anywhere.
Down in police and training, being free.
Okay, right. So police is bringing forth, and then and framing is challenging forth, right? And okay, so let's put it up. I said something slightly wrong. No, I don't. I'm not happy with this now. Historical modes of feeling. That's okay. Yeah, okay. Those are the two modes of revealing. And it turns out that that's what really interests Heidegger. Now, and I guess what I'm looking for is in framing. Okay, framing, challenging forth, right. Now, it's very confusing, and I was very confused about this today, and I'm just beginning to come out of the confusion. Heidegger's, because if you read this within knowing all the distinctions and technical terms we got in basic questions, you're going to be confused, because in basic questions, poesis was the name for one stage in the history of understandings of being. There was physis, which were things bursting forth, poesis, which was a nurturing, bringing forth, techne, which was a kind of production of things, and creation, which was God's production of things. And now it turns out that the way Heidegger's doing it, I think not because he's changed his mind, or because he's lost his mind, but because he's trying to give a lecture and has the amazing illusion that people are going to understand this if only he makes a few pedagogically helpful moves. And his big pedagogical helpful move is to say, well, we're going to divide everything into just two modes of revealing. The bringing forth mode, poesis, and the challenging forth mode in framing, and that will simplify everything. That means that he never talks about poesis as one stage here in the history of the West. He talks about physis, he talks about techne, but he's saving the word poesis now for this general term for every kind of bringing forth. Now let's see where I am. On 21. And it says I should read the whole top paragraph, or at least a lot of it, so I will. But first, maybe I want to read 20. Have I read in framing? I did that. In framing means the gathering together. I read that. Okay.
Yeah.
No. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I'm ready for 21. The word stelling to set up, what? Okay. The word stelling to set upon in the name gestell and framing not only means challenging, at the same time it should preserve the suggestion of another stelling, from which it stems, namely producing and presenting, which in the sense of poesis, lets what presence comes forth into unconcealment. So it's supposed to remind you of poesis, but it's sort of the evil twin of poesis. It's like poesis, only utterly different. This producing that brings forth, like the erecting of a statue, and the challenging ordering now under consideration are indeed fundamentally different, and yet they may remain related in their essence. Well, what? They're two modes of revealing. That's what they've got in common. But they're two utterly different modes. Both are ways of revealing, of aletheia. And in framing, that unconcealment comes to pass in conformity with the work of modern text. comes to pass in conformity with which the work of modern technology reveals the real as standing reserve. Okay, so and that means that things, and that's what we put in the no essence part. Did we put the no essence at that? Oh yeah. Okay. So when you bring forth, you've got to have something that already has some kind of essence to bring it forth. You can't bring forth, there's got to be something in there that you're helping burst forth, or that you're, even in creation, God sort of calls people to their vocations, creates them with some particular destiny. There's always something that unfolds. And on the other hand, in technicity, there are no essences. That's the whole point. There's no essence of airplanes anymore. They're not for transporting people or packages or whatever. There's a whole list of things you can do with airplanes, and you could probably add more. Yeah.
Why, if at all, subject object belongs?
I was just going to say that next. Okay. Yes, subject object is interesting. And you might want to say that it has no essence, that it has essence or that it doesn't have an essence. Try to figure it out. If the model for subject object is science, then it's interesting. Science has put out a ground plan, and relative to that ground plan, things show up with essences. That is, the essence of anything is matter and, force, mass, and motion. Heidegger tells you what in the Newtonian ground plan counts as the essence of all objects. But it's a funny thing, because it's not as if you could bring out the essence of things, because it's only relative to a ground plan that they've got the essence. Under the Einsteinian ground plan, the essence of things are going to be, I don't know, where they are in curved space-time or something. I don't know enough about it, but it's certainly not going to be the Newtonian essence anymore. And that's not going to be the last ground plan. So subject-object is sort of transitional. It's not pure flexibility, but it's not things with essences independent of what we are, with independent of the intelligibility we give them. Yeah.
Sorry, but essence, isn't the point of essence that it comes in advance?
Yes. Well, but there are two essences coming in advance. That helps. Is the essence that comes in advance something intrinsic, where you're cultivating it, bringing it out, like in plants, where you cultivate the plants, or in friendship, where you cultivate the friendship, or in children, where you try to help them become who they are, not who you want them to be if you do it right? That's one form of a priori. It's really in there. And another form is you decide in advance what will count as a such and such, and that's the ground plan one. And that makes the ground plan one a kind of challenging forth, because you insist that they can only come forth under your grounds for intelligibility, and you're not trying to get it, help them be what they are. Does that help any? You don't look convinced. Well, no, according to Heidegger anyway. Let's get clear what we're trying to do. And first, whether we're disagreeing about Heidegger, I don't think we are. Heidegger's got it clear, and I'll read you quotes for a minute, that even the subject-object, and that's what I'm trying to explain, because Liz asked me to, and I was going to anyway, that even the subject-object story is a story of challenging force. He says so on 22. The modern physical theory of nature prepares the way, the top paragraph, first not simply for technology, but for the essence of modern technology. For already in physics, the challenging gathering together into order and revealing holds sway. But even yet, that gathering does not yet come expressly to appearance. Modern physics is the herald of framing, that herald whose origin is still unknown. I'm trying to explain that. What's happening? Well, an order is being imposed on things, relative to which they have an intelligibility and an essence. But since it's subject to change and up to us what order is imposed, it's a priori, but it's not innate. Put it that way. The essence story is that these things, trees and children and so forth, have essences, and you can't change them by changing your ground plane with respect to them. Yeah,
What sense?
in the ground plane, not up to individuals, not up to individuals, up to science. Well, it's up to the community of scientists, as far as science is concerned, what ground plan they're all going to accept and what anomalies they're going to find, what will count as anomalies, given their ground plan. That's up to them. That's what I mean. They are going to challenge things forth as, say, matter energy. And then, yeah.
So they don't think of themselves as.
That's right. We said that last time. Remember, I was following John's point. Yes, they don't think of themselves as doing that, but we observe them and they're doing that. And Heidegger wants to make this big break. I mean, we could have written on there, poesis is pre-modern, and in framing is modern and postmodern. And that's how he sees it. And I'm just trying to explain it. Yeah.
I think the last thing that I think in order to making some things is to say why techne doesn't count as challenging for it. Right?
Techne does? Oh, okay. Well, we are ready. Right, in that sense. That's,
because it looks like they're.
Well, yeah, let me know. We know the answer to that one, but I'll get there. There's so many hands about this so far. Yeah.
Oh.
And that would mean that it has to do with the way of revealing. Then the way of revealing the technology is done, and that is it.
Is its essence. Yes, right. Sorry, or
so
I
know essence.
Okay. Well, I see what you're all having now. Forrest makes it clear. I am using essence in two ways, or in the old-fashioned way. Heidegger uses essence in this way, that essence is how the clearing works, or how the practices work to do a certain kind of revealing. Remember, I said he's just switching the notion of essence. So you can talk about the essence of technicity, and that means how does it work? So technicity has an essence, and no wonder I'm confusing. I'm going back to the old way of talking, where it belongs as part of the pre-modern picture that things have in them some tendency which we can further. Now, I've been using nurturing examples where there's sort of something the child or the friendship or the plant is trying to be, and you can help. Now, he doesn't use nurturing examples because this funny fact that I guess I want to get up there and cross out police, but in a funny way, and I don't need to put it on the list because he won't keep it on the list. He wants to cross this one out just for the sake of exposition. He talks about, I'll read you passages, he talks about how, as bringing forth, he says there's physis, there's techne. He doesn't talk about this one either, but it's not that I think he's just not interested in this one. And this one, I put old-fashioned essence. Otherwise, you will certainly get confused, right? So, and this is no old-fashioned essence, where things are being just flexible. It's really, there's an ontic and an ontological story about essence, I presume. When Heidegger's talking about essence, he's doing this ontological story. It's how a clearing works. And he's not even interested in the old-fashioned question of what's the essence of chestnut trees, dogs, children. That doesn't, that's, I don't know, just not on this list of things to concern himself with, I think. Now, but there was something else I was going to talk about. Oh yeah, well, let me go through step by step, because I wrote this down so we could try to get this sorted out. We got to get all this terminology right. So let's go to 29, because that's where he distinguishes pieces from. That's where he distinguishes two kinds of revealing at the bottom of 29. Start with that. The two basic kinds of revealing I've been talking about. Revealing is that destiny which suddenly, inexplicably to all thinking, apportions itself into the revealing that brings forth, and that also challenges, and which allots itself to man. The challenging revealing has its origin as a destiny in bringing forth. That is, that's the first kind, which it turns into the second kind. but at the same time, in framing, in a way characteristic of destiny, blocks poesis. So the first kind is poesis. It turns into inframing, and inframing that is challenging forth makes it impossible to have a letting come forth relation. Yeah.
Think about destiny for a second.
Okay. Yes. Well, what destiny for him is that there is. I think the point about destiny is that it's not up to any particular people or any group of people. There's no subject. It's not the working class or the folk or you or me that does it. It's something that happens, in my language, in the practices, and there's no way to explain it. And it's destiny means it just happens, I think. But he's very what? What? It's always the revealing. They just happen. And that's destiny. But it isn't fate, he's going to say. Just because it happens outside of any understanding and control of us or any other subject, big or little, doesn't mean that we aren't free in respect to it. And I'll come back to that. To say that it's a destiny and not a fate means to say it happens outside of our understanding and control, but nonetheless, it doesn't push us around. We can have a free relation to it. Okay. But we're getting, so now we've got this distinction of the two, and then he starts putting everything into place around them. So you get poesis is related to thesis. We got to go, where is that? I've put down the wrong number. I've written page 10. It couldn't be on page, well, it could be on page 10. It is on page 10, you know. Okay. On that one, he says that near the bottom, thesis also, the arising of something from out of itself is a bringing forth, poesis. Thesis is indeed poesis in the highest sense. That is because it's bursting forth. It's the most, we are the most receptive. If the essence, well, essence is the wrong word, but if it's characteristic of poesis, of bringing forth, that there's got to be something that we're being receptive to when we bring it forth, then thesis sees us as the most receptive, and everything is over on the side of the bursting forth thing. I got that someplace. Let's see. Well, I want to say, but we still receive it when it bursts forth. That's the sense in which thesis is still a kind of poesis, a kind of minimum kind of poesis, where that is, how do we bring it forth when a rose blooms or a tree blooms or a god rushes up? Well, we're still involved in its showing up. It couldn't show up if it weren't for us to have something to show up to. But that's our minimum role in bringing it forth. It's just to give it a space, a clearing, and us to show up to. That's thesis. Now let's hear about technique. When you bring something out of some material that could have been shaped in several ways, and you shape it in one way, that's techne. This is in the middle of 13. This is Aristotle's version, which is, when you look, that is the techne which is here. It turns out that techne is going to be, we don't have that anywhere. Oh yeah, here it is. It turns out that techne has to do with all kinds of being created. But insofar as techne is a particular mode, then it's not a bursting forth mode. Heidegger skips the nurturing mode altogether, the way of revealing that's called poesis. I do call these all ways of revealing. Yeah, modes of revealing. So he's got this mode of revealing. What's this mode of revealing? Well, that's the whole four causes in the chalice story. Let's just review that. When the four causes in Aristotle are not sort of efficient causes, none of them are efficient causes. It's not like our causality, where we think of causality in a challenging way as sort of what pushes things around. None of these causes is a way of pushing anything around. What happens is, there is, with all of this is on page, where are the four causes? Yeah, and 7. So you list them on page 6, and then you get them laid out on page 7, where he talks starting on the third paragraph. There's the Chile part, that is, the chalice is indebted to the silver. There's the morphate part. The Chile part is normally translated matter, but you don't want to think of this as just sort of pure, undifferentiated stuff. Silver already has capacities to be made into chalices and rings and money, but you can't make it into what? Food. Good. So it's the stuff, and you're indebted to. And then the form is the sacrificial. The sacrificial vessel is dedicated to the eidos, the aspect, which is like the form. That it's got the silver's got to be in a certain shape in order to be a chalice. And final cause is very interesting. The final cause is that it has to serve the needs of the community. I mean, you make the chalice because there are certain religious ceremony which requires the chalice. It's a sacrificial vessel, so the religious practices of the community determine what's going on there. And then there is the maker of the chalice. And that's the one we think is the efficient cause. He looked at, he started banging it into shape. But that's not Heidegger's story at all. Now I'm in about the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph on 8. The silversmith considers carefully and gathers together the 3 aforementioned ways of being responsible and indebted. That is, he picks the right kind of silver, he gets the right kind of shape for a chalice to be in this kind of religious ceremony, and then the fact that he bangs on the silver and gets it into that shape doesn't show up anywhere in this front side. And did you get a chance to read about the wheelwright in Borgman? How many read that? Can you see? Well, only if you can you see how perfectly it fits this. Borgman has found the exact example of the wheelwright who goes around and looks for just the right kind of wood to be made into the wheels, and makes the wheels so that they fit the bumps. Well, fit both the landscape where the guy's going to use the cart and what the guy's going to do with the cart, and therefore bends this wood which has its own, which has the capacity to be wheels into the wheels to make the cart for that person who has that use for it in that community. Okay, all this is meant to be a story of the specific kind of technique that Aristotle was interested in. It's and that's a mode of revealing. It's a way of bringing forth. Now let's see. So techne is itself a kind of poesis. See how confusing this is from basic questions where techne was Aristotle and poesis was an earlier stage in Plato. I mean, remember, in basic questions, there's the physis stage, which is the time of the temple. There's the poesis stage, which is the productive seeing in Plato. There's the techne stage, which is Aristotle, and we would have a Christian stage and so forth. Now, we just skip the poesis stage, because it's been raised up to the ontological level. Right, yeah, I think he's just doing this so that people won't get confused. Of course, they haven't read basic questions, so they won't get confused. We have. What is pedagogical for a lecture, or is it given in Munich to a gang of people, is a disaster in this course, but we will straighten it out. So at the top of 13, that he's talking about techne is the name not only for the activities and skills of the craft, but also for, that's the one we just discussed, it's the chalice method, but also for the arts of the mind and the fine arts. Techne belongs to bringing forth, to poesis. It's something poetic. Poesis is the general category of bringing forth. All these modes of poesis. That's the, is that all clear? Yeah, John.
I think name relation theory.
Yes. Oh, that comes next. Oh, absolutely. No, that needs a lot of explaining. And moreover, I in looking as much time as I had, I don't think he ever used poesis as the name for our relation to the clearance. So we should put some kind of strange marks around that too. And there are other words that take the place of poesis. Again, he's going to save poesis for this. I mean, he's a good teacher. I mean, he doesn't want to uses it ambiguously. But he uses all kinds of synonyms for poesis when he gets to the clearing. So let me get to that. On page 27, there's a place where, and this is a hard one. Let's try. I had other ones. What did I do with them? That's weird. I'll find them again. Oh, here. When the talk is about us being receivers and preservers. That's poesis, really. And where is it now? I say it's on 25. Where he's doing all this. Okay. Now what we want, here's my story, and now I'll try to flip it on Heidegger's story. What we are is receivers of clearing. We have to, when clearings need us, and we can further them by bringing out the practices of the clearing and ignoring the marginal practice and refining the mainline practice. I would call that a role as preservers. Heidegger talks about how the creators of works of art need preservers for the works of art. Well, clearings in general need something like preservers, which I don't mind calling it. They need receivers and preservers. Now, they need people who do this sort of thing. I'm going to read this, though he never calls it poesis. This is the top paragraph on 25. Man becomes truly free only insofar as he belongs to the realm of destiny and becomes one who listens and hears, and not one. Okay, so one of our jobs is to get into a listening and hearing in relation to the clearing. And then skipping a little, next, the big paragraph. Freedom governs the open in the sense of the cleared light of reveal. It is to the happening of revealing the truth that freedom stands in the closest and most intimate relationship. All revealing belongs within a harboring and the concealing. Well, harboring is another word for this preserving and nurturing. What else could we be doing but preserving and nurturing the clearing? Now let me see. I want one more, I think. No, maybe I don't have another one. We are needed. Let me see if we go further. Well, now maybe I should go to 24 at the top. I mean, the general relation is, of course, that the clearing needs us. He says, does this happen, this revealing happen somewhere beyond all human doing? No. But that is, but neither does it happen exclusively in man or through man. That is, it's something that we're needed for, but it's not something that we are clear about and control. All that is part of that same picture. Now, Forrest, you want to say something? I think. No. Oh, where did I see a hand? John? Nobody? I thought I saw a hand. Okay, so there are hints all over, I want to say, that we have this relation to the clearing in which we are. Now I can read this difficult thing on page 27. Now I want to say, now I'll read you a passage, a line that I think says it. We are in a poesis relation to the clearing all the time, whether we're sensitive to it or know it or not. It's up to us that the practices are preserved, perpetuated, and that's enough. And so poesis is going on all the time, so to speak, in the background and in relation to the background. And I think that's what this sentence says in the first full paragraph on 27, that third sentence. Well, we're talking about enframing. Where enframing holds sway, it drives out every possibility. Well, that's not the line I want. Above all, enframing conceals that revealing, which he does say it once, which in the sense of poesis lets what presences come forth into appearance. We've had this discussion. This is a very puzzling sentence, and Forrest and I read it in two different ways. But this is a very important sentence because it's the use of the word poesis, and we don't. And how could enframing? Now the question is, enframing conceal something which is going on anyway, and that is the puzzling thing. What could enframing conceal that was going on anyway, and lets things come forth into appearance. Well, my reading is the only thing that is happening all the time and lets things come forth into appearing is the clearing. That's the opening which things show up. It can't mean, if this sentence makes sense, I don't see how poesis could possibly mean bringing forth as opposed to challenging forth, because then it would say a contradictory thing, that in framing concealed a revealing. Well, no, I see it flips back and forth. I can see how Forrest reads it. I don't know which way to read it. Which way do you want to read it?
Well, right now
I'm inclined to Forrest reading right.
right, it says, when a certain impulse way, it drives out every other possibility of revealing. But above all, as you might say, would be the sort of, prime example of this driving out.
Mm-hmm.
In training, can fill all the previous other possibilities. Now, that means, in order to make that reading make sense,
Mm-hmm.
you need to equate driving out and concealing.
Yeah, which seems very strange. That's why, Liz is right, and Forrest is right, and I'm right, everybody's right. It's very confusing, because it's the word concealed, which is such a big problem. Anybody want to look it up in the German? I've got the German here. I haven't got time to look it up, but it's near the end there. And who knows German, wants to look it up in the German while I'm talking? Anybody? Well, I'll have to bring you a report next time. Greg, will you do it, or some of you? Okay.
But this idea of preserving is not the same as being feeling. That seems to be.
No, preserving is not bringing forth.
Well, but then you're saying in the oasis here that it's up to us to preserve and perpetuate, and that's how oasis is related to clearing all the time.
Right.
That's oasis is preserving or perpetuating. As opposed to bringing forth. We don't bring forth.
No, we nurture it.
All right, that's fine.
Okay, you see, this poem, the nurturing one, which has been suddenly blanked out of this story, has gone up here, in my only way of understanding it. And now this relation of nurturing and helping come forth is what is the way we are needed by and harbor. What were those other words that I had found? Let's find them.
Well, but nurture can be two senses.
Yeah.
That preserving is a kind of nurturing, but nurturing, I don't understand nurturing as bringing forth.
No, it is.
Nurture the chalice, for example. You do bring forth the chalice.
Yeah. No, you don't. Nurturing doesn't show up here. Bringing forth the chalice is technique. Things bringing themselves forth as pieces. What happened to poesis as nurturing? Well, I think. Well, here, though, in this funny sentence, what happened? Let's see that.
I don't know nurturing.
Well, harboring, giving, safekeeping, he has all these funny terms for it when he doesn't want to say, we do something to the clearing. Let's start with that, which is called harboring it. All revealing belongs within a harboring and a concealing and so forth. And then we have also this talk of, where's the other one? We should be listening and hearing the clearing. All of that is funny words. Let's see now how it's related to poesis here. Framing is a challenging forth. Then there's bringing forth is also a destiny. Okay, so poesis is a destiny and challenging is a destiny. They're both ways that we don't control, that things can show up for us. We are now challenged for to challenge things forth. Now let's see. And the destiny holds sway over man. And he listens and hears it. He doesn't just obey it. And then it turns out that he harbors it. The free, all revealing belongs within a harboring and concealing. The freedom, well, I don't find more, but I think that there is something. I don't know what we should call it, but we have this. Let's just talk about the phenomena. We have this relation to the practice. We can further them, and we can press on in a frenzied way with, for instance, challenging forth, or we can try to sort of put the brakes on them and look at marginal practices and try to bring them out and help them come forth. This is our kind of freedom. Let's talk about this.
But we're not.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not in control of this. It is something that comes autonomous. It is our destiny. We can't decide whether to do this.
Well, that's true. But how do you distinguish that from a fate?
No, fate is. I think it is fate, but not fate is.
You think that we have no freedom at all then?
No, I think freedom is
no. What is it?
It's freedom to be seekers and freedom to be preservers.
Yes.
Freedom to be the kinds of beings that we affect.
Well,
but it's not freedom to decide whether we're going to be framing or whether we're going to be cohesive or be any of these things. This just comes upon us.
That's all true. But on the other hand, we seem to be able to resist it or to drive it on further.
Well, I don't see how it is this way of revealing in which we are. We can't get outside it. We can't get in it. I mean, into it. We are in it.
Oh, we certainly are in it.
And we can't choose to be out of it.
Okay. And what is it to have a free relation to it, as opposed to push on with it blindly and frenziedly?
To understand it, to understand. Again, have it to believe it.
And when we do,
that is the free relation.
And then we won't push on with it blindly. What will we do?
We'll no other than push on with it. It may not be blindly, but that's a question.
We will push on with it. You think so? That's not what I think we'll do.
Have no choice.
Well, it's not a liberal choice, all right. Okay. But if we could, if in our practices, we understood ourselves as the receivers of and preservers of the enframing practices, yes, we would already no longer have an enframing understanding of being. And we would be out of it, so to speak, no longer in it. We would still have technological devices, but we would have sort of exploded. That's what Heidegger wants us to do. He wants to get us by his kind of genealogical story, where we are no longer understanding everything in terms of the flexible ordering of ourselves and everything else, but we are now understanding ourselves as receivers and preservers. And don't that make a difference in what we do?
I suggest in the sense of essay turning.
Right.
But that's not something we can do.
Well, it's certainly not something. Okay. Well, John, you want to say something about this?
Well, I think that the distinction is part of the relation to technology that points out in the extent of what we understand then I can't understand why that wouldn't already be some transformation.
Well, I think right. But we agree then. You're agreeing with me. Yeah. But I think Forrest is agreeing too that once we really had this understanding, not just of course intellectually, so we repeated it and got A's in exams, but once it made a difference in how it would, once we really understood it, it would make a difference in our practices. And I do think that we're free in that sense to sort of start sort of preserving and enforcing our receptive side instead of our challenging forth side. Wait, John wants to say more, and then Forrest.
Question is that, are we going to describe that by using the word cohesive here, or using the notion of given and play? People come to understand called as preservatives. Do we only have a cohesive understanding of being to help that relation? And all these things being at origin. There's nothing that comes before that.
Well, that's right. Yes.
So, is there a reiteration of the DNA that he's asking for?
Well, now let's see. There is this cohesive here, which is bringing forth, and that's kind of onto story. And now he wants us to. Of course, it's not a kind of if poesis belongs here at all, it's not the way we nurture children and crops and friendships. It's got to be something like the way. I mean, but Heidegger talks how the clearing has been given us for safekeeping and we're sort of, and harboring and all these sort of protection words. But it doesn't have any essence in this old-fashioned sense of essence. You can't sort of let the clearing grow up to be what it's trying to be. So whether poesis is the right word for it or not, I'm not sure. There is a sense in which we are supposed to uh, help the clearing along, or we can sort of, I think, help alternative clearings come along. Yeah.
Like the phrase "bringing forth" is also there.
Okay.
In that, living in the light of the clearings, right? The encountering things as the clearing reveals, and means sort of letting the clearing, bringing forth the clearing in its fullness, right? So maybe the bringing forth gets away from some of the strong language about nurturing or some of the strong language.
But you may want to have something sort of change the challenging forth practice.
And that's really bringing forth
other practice, marginal practice. And I think that's part of our freedom. Let me read the best quotes I can, because there's sort of my view of what he ought to say, and then there's sort of what he does say, and I try to bring them together if I can, but maybe I can't. Okay, so let me go back to where we were. So I'm still worrying about this sentence, but okay, I'm going to just read my passage, because I still don't know what to think of this one on 27 that I'm still worrying about. Remember this use of poesis. We don't know until we see the German. Anybody got the German yet? What that word conceals is?
Normal one.
It's for verbergen. Okay, so above all, in framing conceals, that revealing.
What does that?
Right.
See, it sounds like it conceals that it stands in the way of our understanding. That's our forest reach? Is that revealing what's essential? Lets what presences come forth into appearance. I think that might be right. I think that's right. So that passage, poesis in that passage on page 27 is this. Okay. And there isn't any use of the word poesis for this. And maybe it's just as well. Maybe Heidegger is right not to use poesis for that.
Part of my difficulty is that the difference between we're talking about clearing and understanding of being. Because clearly we cannot inaugurate or change understanding of being. They're different.
We can do something. I mean, first thinkers can do it, but I mean, we ordinary people can't do it.
Can they inaugurate?
Yeah, they can reconfigure them. I mean, they can't do it except insofar as they're responsive to the practices that are there. Right, and moving in. And then that's right. I mean, Jesus can do a pretty big deal by when he reconfigures, by bringing the margin to the center. But if there wasn't already marginal practices there, and if they weren't already moving to the center with other weird sects all having the same ideas, he couldn't do it. So there's this sort of funny thing between liberal freedom, where you can just as an autonomous subject do what you please, and some kind of determinism of the practices, sort of like Bourdieu, if any of you know it, where you're simply formed by and locked into the practices of your culture, period. And I think Heidegger wants something in between. So let me go back to my quotes, because I think maybe we all will agree about it when we get it laid out. So one, we just might do it in passing, because we may not get another chance. The important line on 27, besides the one we read, is where technicity holds sway, it drives out every other possibility of revealing. So that's the danger. We got to know what the danger is before we know what we can do about it. The danger is that technicity has this peculiar character of driving out all the other modes of revealing. Why is that? Because everything can be made efficient, whereas somehow this doesn't make any sense for the other modes of revealing. I tried to think about it. In the Christian one, everything is already a creature, or else it's a non-being. You don't find somehow more and more stuff being brought into the creation business. And in other ones, they don't cover everything, and you can't picture them covering everything. There's lots of not techne stuff, which is thesis stuff, and the techne stuff can't take over the thesis stuff. So it's a unique thing, I think, about efficiency practices, that anything can be made efficient. Remember, I think I said playing with your kids can be made efficient, friendship can be turned into networking, Yellowstone can be turned from a wilderness into a place for sort of recreation, so that you feel more strong when you go back to work, and so forth. Yeah.
The art as a possible kind of example, what you sort of art can be turned into.
Yeah, I guess I would say that, right. And experience, to be more general. Art can be turned into aesthetic peak experiences, and is right now. So technology can take over all the other modes of revealing. That's just something to notice. That's what makes it particularly dangerous and necessary that we resist it. Yeah.
So let me just get this clear, that you're attracting things that are complete information.
Well, I'm attracting the word, right. We are always in a relation, and I'm trying to, two things. I think it may be confusing to say we're in a poesis relation to the clearing, so I'm going to take that back, and leave him the only use of poesis that he wants. I mean, there is still poesis here. We can't really cross this one out. Because he uses it in other places, and we certainly went to a stage in the culture in which this happened, but he doesn't want to talk about it. Okay, so it doesn't have to talk about it. This is his way of, this is his use. I do want to keep up here, and this is what we're talking about now. What is our relationship with it? Let's not call it poesis. But now we've got other words like harboring, safekeeping, and maybe preserving, and we want to know what that is, because that's the sense in which we have a little bit of freedom, I think, of a very important sort, to do something or other about the clearing. But all I've said so far is that there's a big danger with technicity uniquely, and it would be an interesting paper to work it out. Why technicity among all the various modes of revealing has this capacity to take in everything. It goes back partly to the ground plan, which, remember, already took in everything. It's got to do with the totalizing character of the modern understanding of being that the other ones didn't have. Somehow, they also covered everything that was, but they didn't cover everything that was so completely. Remember, rigor is the ground plan that has no place for miracles, no place for monsters, no place for messiness. It's just everything has got to fit into the ground plan, or else you got to give up the ground plan. And that's modernity, I think. And technicity is like that. Everything has got to be made efficient, and it will be made efficient, and there's nothing that can resist being made efficient. Yeah.
I just don't understand why the Christian story is that everything must be a creation and stuff. Everything.
Well, I said that's funny. Everything is a creation of God, even the miracles.
You know it ahead of time, almost like a
right.
ground plan.
Well, almost like a ground plan. It's nearest. But what you don't have is sort of expanding. You don't find stuff which isn't yet a creation, and then you take it over and make it a creation. The funny thing about the technicity one is, that's what I tried to say earlier, but let me say it again. I thought about this a lot, that either you get modes of revealing that are just not total, like the technicity and the thesis ones, I think, or you get a mode of revealing that's already total, like the creation one. Everything is created by God, or it's just non-being. And you don't have any that's like this one, which has sort of the imperative to be total. Everything isn't just already efficient, but everything can and must be made efficient. That's the current practice. Yeah.
The closest one is science of the modern understanding.
That's right.
Because it's approximate early.
That's right. The subject-object ground plan research story is the beginning of a new idea that everything isn't yet in the ground plan, but we know beforehand everything must be put in the ground plan. So it's totalizing. It's not yet total. And technology is totalizing. It's not yet total, but it keeps going to will bring in everything else. That's how it, if there's something special about framing, where this ordering holds sway, it drives out every other possibility of revealing. He didn't say that about Christianity or technology. It sounds like it's a unique feature here.
But for example, theology, would be an example of where you're trying to take over something that doesn't look like it possibly could be created.
You're trying, but you know beforehand that it was. I mean, it isn't as if you want to make it for you, the way you want to make, say, child raising.
No, at this time, this way of revealing that everything is just found too. You need to take it over.
Well, how I think about it, everything has got to be a challenge force that is turned into the stone, I think.
But you know ahead of time you can do it, because it's the way everything is.
You know that ahead of time you can do it,
Yeah.
but you've got to do it, and then, well, all I want to say is, there's some way, each one of you could try to figure it out, that I do think this sentence where he says this, where framing holds sway, it drives out every other possibility of revealing, there's supposed to be something special about in framing. You don't think so? Well,
It doesn't mean nothing else.
yeah, but it's funny. I mean, he says it as if these are things about in framing that you better worry about. He doesn't. I mean, if it was just that any understanding of being drives out every possibility of revealing, it'd be a funny thing to say about in framing. He would just say, remember, in framing is a possibility, is a way of revealing, and any way of revealing drives out every other possibility.
And there are ways in which that's true, right?
Well, there are ways in which they make the other ones make the other ways unintelligible. We get again, the pagan practices hang around, but they become unacceptable and unintelligible for the Christians. But they don't feel that they have to take them all over. Let's find a different one. The nurturing practices hang around, but one doesn't feel that one needs to nurture the stones or something like that. What I think is that that this one has this peculiar character that it requires you to bring everything into it, and that's unique. That starts with modernity. Yeah, I didn't answer you very well. What did you say again? Say it again.
Well, what I said was that there are these features of worlds that we talked about before. They're all governing and they withdraw.
Yeah, right. Well, they all govern and they all withdraw, but that's not the same as expand. The sense in which the technological practices it's one thing to just ignore the other ways of revealing. It's another thing to not tolerate them, to insist that they disappear. Yeah, okay. And I want to say the other ways of revealing hang around as unintelligible and bad, even wicked, but they hang around. But in the technology thing, they don't hang around as unintelligible and wicked, the inefficient things. They just get made efficient. That's what I think is the difference. Yeah, somebody had a hand up back there. Yeah.
It just seemed like in the Christian understanding of being, like the theologians, that they're not letting those marginal facts to which that be unintelligible. They're creating entire theologies trying to give them explanations. They're not just letting them be kind of these weird things. So I don't see how that isn't the total.
Okay, well then I would have to make a distinction, which is complicated here, between what the theologians are doing and what the everyday people are doing.
Okay.
In the technology one, we're all in there making the stuff efficient that isn't efficient, raising our kids. It isn't just the philosophers who say raise your kids so as to get the most out of their brain cells, and that seems to be the point. It's the practices themselves at their everyday level, which are this growing, ramping out time. Yeah.
The other way I think you can go for the way in which inframing is more totalizing
Mhm.
is that this thing about it driving, it being more world dominating and there being less space for Earth, right? So it's the one way in which the limit seems.
Yes, and where Earth is the unintelligible and what resists being made intelligible, then in framing, that's another way to put the same point. If you think that in framing gets rid of Earth, then you think that in framing has a special way of taking over everything and bringing it into its form of intelligibility without residue. Yeah. And okay, I mean, it's very important to get the rest of this out because we're not going to go back to this. We've got to go on to things thinking. And so we're still in, I just want to say what I can about the freedom thing and show you the passages. So the question is now the danger. We've been discussing the danger. The danger is that all other modes of revealing will be standardized. I think that's That's what he thinks. And then the question is, how do we resist? And the answer is gain a free relation to technology. That's what the first pages tell you this essay is going to enable you to do. So the question is, what in the world can that be? I mean, in the face of what Boris says rightly, I mean, it can't be sort of liberal freedom, but it's got to be something. He says, the very first page, we want to prepare a free relation to technology. And so how can we do, what is it to do that? Well, I'll pick the pages I can and try to explain them as best I can. I'm trying to get the crucial ones. 25, have we read? 25, that's what we need to read. Okay, about third line of the first paragraph. But the destiny is never a fate that compels, for man becomes truly free only insofar as he belongs to the realm of destiny, and so becomes one who listens and hears, and not one who is simply constrained to obey. You certainly can't tell yet whether that just means we should sort of be aware of what's happening to us or do something about it. I'm trying to argue that there's something we can do about it. So let's see if I can get anywhere. Freedom governs the open, I'm skipping down, in the sense of the clear and lighted. That is, it is to the happening of revealing, that is a truth that freedom stands in the closest and most innate kinship. All revealing belongs within a harboring and concealing, but that which frees, the mystery is concealed and always concealing itself. All revealing comes out of the open, goes into the open, and brings into the open. The freedom of the open consists neither in unfettered arbitrariness nor in the constraint of laws. Now let's see if I can. Freedom is the realm, given the end, is the realm of the destiny at any given time starts a revealing on its way. It's getting, I don't know what that means yet, but, and it isn't something you and I can do, but it's got something to do with us not being simply sort of pushed around by it. And so let me go on. I'll find you the passages. I'm not sure I can explain them. I think what I think is happening is we are free to seek marginal practices or to go on in a frenzied way, push on the technological practices. Let me see at the bottom of that. When we consider the essence of technology, then we experience and frame it as a destiny of revealing. In this way, we are already so within the open space of destiny, a destiny which in no way confines us to a stultified compulsion to push on blindly with technology, or what comes to the same thing, to rebel helplessly against it and curse it as the work of the devil. Quite the contrary, when we open ourselves expressly to the essence of technology, we find ourselves unexpectedly taken into a freeing flame. Now, what is that? Well, let's see if I can find anything more that tells us anything about it. Pride. Well, okay. I think what happens then is that there's one sense in which we can. I mean, I'll do it half Forrest way and half my way for the next 5 minutes. There are two ways that we might get out of technology at the bottom of 35. And he says, the closer we come to the danger, the more brightly do the ways into the saving power begin to shine, and the more questions become. Okay, what are the two ways into the saving power? One of them is the hope that techne will again produce a work of art. That will be that would be like having a new God. Oh, this is on 34. There would be a new overall style. We would have to receive it. We couldn't produce it. It would have only the people who were the sort of the reconfigurers would have a certain amount of freedom to deal with it. But mostly it would just happen to us. That is, he talks about there was once a time when, on 34, when techne was the bringing forth of in the fine arts, and it brought about the presence of the gods and so forth. And that at the top of 35 would get us into the founding a new business. Could it be that revealing lays claim to the arts more primordially, so that they, for their part, may expressly foster the growth of the saving power, may awaken and found anew our looking to that which grants our trust in it? It could just be that we get a new work of art and a new God. For instance, I don't have much time to go into it. I mean, ecology and the earth might turn out to be a new God. Gaia will be our new God. New meaningful differences will be whether you help the earth or don't. What makes sense to do is to conserve everything, to be vegetarians and to minimize our destructiveness. Everything will show up as endangered and so forth. Then, and there will be some artists and some thinkers who found a new way of being on the basis of our relation to ecology. Quite possible. And some new statesman, who could be an eco-fascist, who takes over the world on the grounds that he's going to save the earth, even if he has to kill millions of people, and everybody says, yes, do it. That's one crazy vision of what a new God might be. There might be nicer new gods. But in any case, the other one is just the transition we've got 3 minutes to make. There is also something we can do, and that is, and this is one paragraph below the bottom of 33, through this we are not yet saved. Well, then first, whatever it is, by the way, there's a precondition of the two moves. Until we understand technology as a mode of revealing, we're certainly stuck in it and pursue it and are pushed around by it blindly. So first, we do what this essay has just done. We get a free relation to technology by understanding it as a mode of revealing. But then he says, through this we are not yet saved. Of course not. What are we going to have besides just now we understand that we're so to speak caught up in framing and challenging forth? Well, the first one he says, well, we are summoned to hope in the growing light of the saving power. How can this happen? Here and now in little things, that we may foster the saving power in its increase. That's the active one. That we could do something to foster the saving power through our relation to the humble things. Little things is not right there. The humble things. So the question is, and that's the active one for us. So here's my story, that there's one kind of change, getting a new work of art, which doesn't give us normal people any freedom at all, and only gives the reconfigurers and the statesmen and the artists who have a certain important kind of freedom to reconfigure anything to be. And then there's something we can all do. We can, what does it mean? Foster the saving power of the humble things. Fostering is something like, that's what I wanted called nurturing, but it never is called nurturing, so we'll just have to say fostering. I wonder what the German word is. But that seems to be something that we are free to do. And now the question is then, what does that look like? Well, that's what Borgman and the Thing essay and the Building Dwelling Thinking essay is all about. How we can resist technology in the name of the humble things, strengthen those practices, and thereby resist the technological practices. We don't know what that means yet. That's what we're going to find out next. Okay, everything's arranged. We can start talking. Let's see now. There was so much that wasn't clear yet when I was talking about the technology part. And the technology is so interesting and important and exciting because finally all this abstract stuff that you learned in the first 5 weeks about ways of being and revealing and concealing and modes of revealing and so forth, finally you get to your own mode of revealing, and you get to bring your own experience and phenomenology into relation with this very abstract Heideggerian way of thinking about it, and that is very exciting, I think. But I was tired, and it was so hard, and so I'm going to go review, wrote out